What's going on, everyone? I think we're gearing up to be live here on the Facebook Live, the Periscope, everything else. I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle. Somewhere on this screen is Robert Cessna of the Eagle as well, and we're here. This is our weekly Zoom Hangout with sports reporters from all over the country. Cease, I'll let you go ahead and introduce our guest for this week.
Yeah, we're real fortunate to have Don Williams, veteran sports writer, editor, whatever, for the Lubbock Avalanche-Journal. Don's been out there before the South Plains was even named. I get to spend one Tuesday every year at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame committee members meeting, and Don by far comes the furthest, comes on his own, pays his way, what have you. He's that kind of guy. He's covered Texas Tech. I did look that up, Don, since 1986. So Spike Dykes, Mike Leach, one of the good guys in the business. I want to say for some of our viewers out there, Aggies, one of our most read stories the last few months was we got a chance to put Don's column in when he talked to Johnny Manziel, when Johnny Manziel was up playing golf up in Lubbock, and Don got to sit down with him. It was very insightful column, and of course all his columns are insightful. Don, thanks for taking some time. Finally, we're going to talk college football, buddy.
And I appreciate you guys having me on, and I miss Texas A&M being in the Southwest Conference and in the Big 12, because I always enjoyed going my trips to Kyle Field, and I always enjoyed seeing guys like yourself and Larry Bowen and Shereen Williams when Shereen worked at the Eagles, seeing you guys up here in Lubbock. So I don't get to see you enough anymore this last decade or so.
I will say, back in my days covering TCU and in the Big 12, Lubbock might have had one of the best press box meals in the Big 12.
Oh, they were. You know what? And you probably missed the even better ones, because when I was a young guy back in the late 80s, back in the 80s or so, and in the early 90s, the press box food used to be catered by a business called Danny's Fins and Hens, and they had some of the best chicken fried steaks and gravy and mashed potatoes and fried fish and everything. I think I'd intentionally starve myself and fast for about 24 hours just because the press box meal on Saturday was so good.
Okay, well, I knew not to eat if I was going to Lubbock. 50-yard line, which sad to hear, I heard it's closed down since A&M leaves the conference. But when you went up there, I would make 50-yard line was very hard to beat. It was the talk of the Big 12 back the SWC days, and of course we miss those, because now a lot of times they'll just give you a damn box lunch and say we're not really glad you're here.
Yeah. Now the meal options are too healthy, Robert.
Yeah, I get right to that last part. When I introduce you, Don, I thought about this today. Your column made it sound like you really enjoyed that short time with Johnny Manziel, and anytime you're on Aggies and Johnny Manziel's name comes up. So I just wonder, you said in your column, but did you really enjoy that short time you spent with him, talking to him?
Well, he was here to play a golf tournament at Hillcrest Country Club, and a lot of the country clubs in Lubbock, they have partnership tournaments. It's a really big deal. It'd be like me and you playing together in a golf tournament. And the country clubs in Lubbock, they each have like their big partnership each year. And I had been tipped off about a month in advance. One of the members at Hillcrest told me that, hey, Johnny Manziel is supposed to be playing in the Swinger, the Hillcrest Swinger Golf Tournament. That's the name of it. And so I was aware that he was coming, and then I get the tee times the day before, and sure enough, look for the name. There he is, Johnny Manziel. He was playing with one of his family friends from back in Tyler, who now lives in Tahoka, which is right down the road from Lubbock, just south of here. And so I, check his tee time, and then show up about 5 hours later, and lo and behold, I see him almost immediately as soon as I walk up to the kind of the patio area there, and I say, okay, there he is. And one of the guys I know is talking to him, and immediately introduces me, and my thought was, my preconception was, the last thing that, as much as Johnny Manziel's name has been tarnished over the last few years, the last thing that he wants to see is a sports writer to interview him. But he turned out to be just the opposite. Greeted me really warmly, and almost immediately kind of gestured and said, let's go over here to the table, sit down where it's not so noisy. And we didn't talk for a long time, but he was really engaging and open and forthcoming, and real clear and pretty unambiguous about how much fun he was having kind of away from football. And I didn't really expect to get the answer I was getting. And, I asked him, what is your where do you see your football career at this point? And he said, without even hesitation, said, at this point, probably in the past. And that turned out to be winds up on, I guess, on the pardon me, on the ESPN's crawl the next day. I didn't go into it expecting. I was kind of interested. I guess I was kind of interested on how it would be received, but I kind of misjudged. I didn't think it was something that would wind up getting picked up nationally. I thought it'd be kind of a interesting little story for around here, because he's Johnny Manziel. But I didn't realize that, like I say, that next day you turn on the ESPN and there's Johnny Manziel says football career in past, tells Lubbock Avalanche-Journal. So, like I say, the brief time that I spent with him, he couldn't have been more friendly or engaging. And like I say, I kind of ended the column on the note that I got the impression that he seemed like there's kind of that pressure to be Johnny Football 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago. And now that he didn't have that burden, he seemed kind of free. That's kind of the impression I got, because he just seemed like one of the guys who wanted to hang out and play golf and have fun.
How do you shoot in the round? He's a scratch golfer, from what we hear.
He told me that he lowered his handicap from an 8 to a 2.
Whew.
And they actually wound up winning their flight, which was the third. They have what they call the championship. They have the championship flight, which is the very best guys, and then the president's flight, which is the next best guys, and the first flight. And they have that progressively all the way down to like 6 or 8 flights, and he and his partner actually won the first flight. So then they shot, I think, first or second round, they shot 66. So they had a good weekend up here.
Well, like I said, if you want to look for that column, it was a great column. Just search Don Williams, Lubbock Avalanche-Journal / Johnny Manziel. It'll come up. Don, we got a lot to cover. Hop around. I wondered, what's the pulse of football in South Plains in the Lubbock? What's the pulse right now with COVID and everything? Just what's your take on football in South Plains?
Well, they're kind of dealing with the same things that I guess that we are everywhere with. Texas Tech's been releasing kind of the positive test numbers periodically, ever since they started testing. Obviously, I guess like everybody else, kind of when the players returned in June, they'd release those positive test numbers periodically ever since. And they're kind of the way they're doing it now that the season started. They said that they will announce their numbers each week on Monday. And so day before yesterday, they announced that they're down to only 6 active cases among the football players. Total number of positive tests since they started back in June was 75 players on the team. That got a lot of attention. That's another number that kind of got out there and made some waves nationally. But again, 69 of those 75 are recovered. Right now, they only have 6 guys that they said are active cases, and nobody has required hospitalization. And Matt Wells said a week or two ago that none of the people who have had it have needed anything more than Tylenol. So they haven't really seemed to have anybody who's had a severe case of it. With that said, though, it's not just the positive test that hurt a football team. It's all the other guys that have to quarantine because they've been in contact with somebody who's tested positive. And so on Saturday night in the season opener, they had about 15 guys that were not suited up that would have been suited up under normal circumstances. Now I don't know. We don't know that all of those necessarily are COVID guys or quarantine guys because you know how college football coaches are. They like to be pretty secretive. So now that they have the COVID excuse, anybody they could. Well, for all we know, one of those guys could have been out with a torn knee ligament. But anyhow, there's they were missing about 15 guys on Saturday night, including a real prominent guy who transferred here from Arizona, a linebacker named Colin Schooler. When the Pac-12 said we're not going to play football this fall, he did not want to sit tight. He wanted to play football this fall, and so he put his name in the transfer portal and winds up here a couple of weeks ago. He's the nation's active leader in tackles for loss, second in the nation among active players in total career tackles. So they're huge gap for Tech to have an all Pac-12 level linebacker dropped on your doorstep 2 weeks before the season opens. So there's a lot of anticipation for him. And he was one of the guys that didn't suit up on Saturday night. And one of the starting defensive backs, DeMarcus Fields, who started 32 games, he didn't suit up Saturday night. And so it was not the same old Jones Stadium. Obviously, they're going by the 25% of max capacity. So the most people that they could have in the stadium was about 16,000. And their announced attendance is only about 11,000. So it was more like a spring game atmosphere, and I think all those things added up to Tech was lucky to get out of it with a win on Saturday night against Houston Baptist, because HBU comes in here with three of their young staff members are guys who used to work at Texas Tech. Including Zach Kitley, their offensive coordinator, who Cliff Kingsbury just raved about when Zach was here as a GA, said he's going to really be able to coach quarterbacks. And we saw it on Saturday night. Bailey Zappi from Houston Baptist throws for 567 yards and 4 touchdowns. And it wasn't just that they were, 4 run-of-the-mill touchdowns. 2 of them were 65-yarders, and another one was a 75-yarder. So he really made Texas Tech's secondary look bad. And so even though Tech won 35-33, the fact that they were 39.5-point favorites, and that HBU is an 8th-year program and has never had a winning season, like I said, even though they won, people are up in arms in Lubbock and on the South Plains this week about how bad the Red Raiders looked on Saturday night.
You look across the Big 12. You mentioned Tech's narrow win there. You look at what Kansas State went through. You look what Iowa State went through week 1. Do you see this as some kind of overarching issue with getting things started early in the Big 12, or do you just see this as a case by case thing, just a bad weekend for the conference?
I think it's kind of, it seems like I think every year, even in normal years, you're going to have upsets. You're going to have early season surprises as teams kind of try to gel and come together and see what issues they have that they might not have recognized as issues in August when they were just practicing against each other. But the whole COVID thing kind of compounds and magnifies what the potential downfalls can be. With that said, though, how big of an excuse is it? I think it's a reason for Texas Tech's poor performance on Saturday night, but this is something that everybody's dealing with, so that makes it less of an excuse. Although it seemed to me like Texas Tech probably had more key people maybe missing than HBU did. I mean, HBU, kind of the storyline going into the week was, the quarterback and the receivers are the people to watch. And, the quarterback and those receivers, they were all suited up and obviously ready to go. I think the thing with that, Iowa State and Kansas State was you know, those are two good teams that they played. I mean, Louisiana had been kind of one of the top teams in the Sun Belt for the last couple of years. They just couldn't beat Appalachian State, and a lot of people, I think, believe that Louisiana Lafayette, this is the year that they were going to break through and beat Appalachian. So I don't know that that's a huge surprise, just because that's a quality group, a real good group of five program. And I think probably the same thing with Arkansas State against Kansas State. And I think I would kind of differentiate them as being much better football teams, much better programs than what Texas Tech faced on Saturday night. I mean, because again, teams that beat Iowa State and Kansas State were very good group of five programs. The team that nearly beat Texas Tech was a below 500 FCS program. So, and again, a lot of the Tech people who are up in arms are saying, and I think rightly so, that you can't really compare Tech showing to Iowa State's and Kansas State's, because Iowa State and Kansas State were playing much better, more established football programs.
Okay, with that being said, Don, just one game. I know you can't really judge a book by that, but what is your projections for Texas Tech this season? What do you see them doing this year?
Well, they're kind of a hard team to gauge because a lot of their fortunes are kind of being built around guys who are transfers, guys that we're seeing for the first time, guys that we didn't get to see literally for a single minute in August because practices are closed from start to finish. Used to, or before COVID, we'd at least have 30 minutes to see who was taking snaps with the first team and see what guys literally looked like. Saturday night was our first chance to see any of those guys in Texas Tech's uniforms. They have a kind of an edge guy, outside linebacker from Michigan State named Brandon Bouye Randall, who didn't have really great stats at Michigan State. He'd been there for, I think he's a redshirt junior this year. But you think, okay, now that he's an upper class, he's a real good athletic guy. Now that he's an upperclassman, I think, okay, he's ready to break through. They got the middle linebackers, a young man that was the leading tackler in the nation in the NJCAA last year at one of the JUCOs in Kansas, had 153 tackles. And he looks like the real deal, because for all the bad stuff that happened on Saturday night, he was a real bright spot. Made 12 tackles, and he really looks the part. 6 foot, 240-pound guy. And it's interesting because Jordan Brooks, the middle linebacker last year, was a first-round draft choice for the Seattle Seahawks, Butkus Award finalist, probably best linebacker Texas had since Zach Thomas. And Krishawn Merriweather is wearing the same number one, listed the same on the program, 6 foot 240, and and he sure played a lot like Jordan Brooks on Saturday night. Like I say, just a kind of a prototype middle linebacker. So he was good. And then, let's say, Colin Schooler from Arizona, you expect, I mean, he's a proven Power 5 college football player, so they expect a lot from him, but we didn't get to see him on Saturday night. And then one of their starting safeties is a kid named Eric Monroe, who's from Galena Park, North Shore. Came off state 5 years ago. Was played on state championship team down North Shore 6A. Was a 4 or 5 star recruit, big time guy. Went to LSU. Didn't get to play a lot at LSU. Was mainly a special teams guy and a backup. But when you're Texas Tech and you're struggling, you get a guy from LSU. There's another guy that they have high expectations for. He was didn't really make any big plays on Saturday night. So like I say, it's kind of, to get back to your question, it's kind of a hard team to gauge because so much of it depends on what these new guys are going to be able to do for them. I think offensively they will be pretty solid again. They have most all their skill position players back. The big question for them on offense is they lost 2 offensive tackles that started for a long time. In fact, Terrence Steele was a guy who started 47 games for them, made the Cowboys as a free agent. Lyle Collins gets hurt, and Sunday night, Terrence Steele from Texas Tech, rookie free agent, is starting at right tackle for the Cowboys against the Rams on Sunday night. Was kind of a fun thing for people up here. And then Travis Bruffy, their other starting tackle, started for 34 games. They lost both of those guys. So that's kind of an unsettled position. But I think they have so much else going back on offense that they'll be good on offense. It's just, can they can they put a serviceable defense on the field?
You mentioned a little bit about how spring game like the game felt with the different COVID precautions, the smaller crowd size. What stood out to you as the most interesting difference in how football is being played this year than maybe years past with the COVID precautions? Is there something that you showed up and you were like, I didn't realize it was going to be like this, and then all of a sudden here we are.
Well, Techie kind of told us what the what it would look like. Kind of gave us the what the protocols were going to be. Maybe it's still kind of jarring when you get there and realize it, though. I mean, tailgating limited to 10 people, I think, in a group, so there's very little tailgating going on. Tech has a big thing that they call Raider Alley, where they have live music performers and whatnot, and big gatherings, kind of like maybe the Grove at Oxford, that kind of thing. That's they're not doing that this year. Obviously, wanting to limit groups, not have groups of people, and then you get into the stadium, and the band is in the stands and socially distanced, and the cheerleaders and the Palm Squad are in the stands. So there's very little on-field activity, and so I guess the most visible difference again is just kind of the atmosphere of college football and all the pageantry that goes along with it was pretty much absent on Saturday night.
Don, I'm interested, Matt Wells, you have covered a wide range of coaches when you consider of Spike Dykes, a governor, candidate, Mike Leach, former hero Cliff Kingsbury. Where does Wells fit in, and what's your on him?
Yeah, and all the way back to my days at the campus, played for David McWilliams in 1986 when I was just starting out. But to answer your question, it's interesting because having done this for 35 years now, Matt Wells strikes me as the most prototypical head coach that Tech has had during that time, in the sense that he seems to embrace wearing all the hats that a head coach has to wear. He's willing to be the X's and O's guy. He's eager to be a recruiter. He's a real personable guy who does the outreach to fans and community. He likes to do the booster stuff. He likes to shake hands. He likes to talk. He's one of those people. He's one of those guys that kind of the cliche. You talk to him for 10 minutes and he treats you like you're somebody that he's known all his life, that sort of thing. He is he's real comfortable speaking to people in whatever, whether it's in a group this size, one or two folks just talking to you face to face, or in front of 500 people at a booster function. And like I say, it differs from, say, like for example, Michael Leach and Cliff Kingsbury. They were offensive coaches who they would have been completely happy to spend 50, 60 hours a week doing nothing but watching film and drawing up offensive plays. They weren't that comfortable in booster settings and that sort of thing. Tommy Tuberville was a guy who was kind of like, he was real comfortable talking to people, but he was kind of the CEO head coach. You wondered how much X's and O's coaching Tommy was doing at times. Matt kind of seems to, like I say, wear all the hats and comes across as, very organized guy. But, one thing that, a couple of things have worked against him here, that he has not gotten a very warm reception. People have been kind of skeptical of him ever since he walked in the door. because he came from Utah State Group of Five program. A lot of people, if you're a casual fan, a lot of casual fans had never heard of him. And while he did have 3 really good seasons at Utah State, one where he won, let's say, 9 games, 10 games, and 11 games the last year there. He also had three of his 6 seasons. They were 500 or worse. And so his record before here was 44 and 34, which, doesn't really knock your socks off. And then the other thing that works against him is the same thing that's worked against any Tech coach since 2009, and that is he's not Mike Leach. And that colors people measure Texas Tech's offensive. People measure Texas Tech's offensive now against Mike Leach, and if it doesn't look like a Mike Leach offense, and if it doesn't roll up 70 or 80 points against teams like Sam Houston State, people are angry about it. And so you have the circumstance where I think Alan Bowman is the leading passer in the FBS this week. And the big, one of the hot topics is, is there any other quarterback that Tech can play besides Alan Bowman? What's wrong with that guy? The thing that's wrong with him is, he's not a Mike Leach quarterback, and that's the standard. He's not Patrick Mahomes, and he's not B.J. Simmons, who threw for 52 touchdowns in one season. And so that's the standard that Tech quarterbacks are measured against. That's a standard that Tech coaches now are measured against, and probably will continue to be for who knows how long.
I think what's wrong with both Alan Bowman, if you want to throw Jet Duffy in there, is that I covered them in high school, so that probably set them on the wrong path going forward. Here's the time of this Zoom that we've kind of talked with the other people we talked to this summer. When we didn't have a lot going on, this was the summer of nostalgia. You looked back, found some historical great things to talk about while sport wasn't happening. This is where I'm going to step back and let you two talk, because y'all have so many great memories of Tech and Texas A&M matchups, traveling back and forth to Lubbock. Maybe think back for you two on some of your favorite Texas Tech, Texas A&M matchups there, or funny stories or great interviews that happened between the schools in both y'all's times covering those programs.
There were so many great games.
I think,
so many, goodness gracious, fantastic finishes, Robert. I remember 2006 down at Kyle Field in College Station. And one of my colleagues, Jeff Walker, who was our sports editor at the time, I don't remember exactly what our conversation was, but I told him how, maybe it was his first Tech and A&M game. I don't remember for sure, but I was telling him about how, whenever these two teams get together, it's count on, great game and a fantastic finish, because they down through the decades, it's just one after another after another. And so, the end of that game was when Graham Harrell threw the touchdown pass to Robert Johnson that went through Jordan Peterson's hands, if I remember correctly. What was it, 40 or 50-yard touchdown pass? And I just reached over and slapped Jeff on the shoulder and said, "There you go, another fantastic finish." That's what Texas Tech and Texas A&M are all about. Even all the way back to when before you and I were even here, Robert, when we were little kids, 1967 or 8, the year that the Aggies lost 4 in a row and then won 7 in a row to get Gene Stallings' teams to the Cotton Bowl. And that started at Jones Stadium with Ed Margate running 15 yards for a touchdown with 3 seconds left in the game. And that's infamous in Tech history because Larry Steegent blocked a Tech defensive end named George Cox, cut him at the knees. And, Tech fans, Larry Steegent's name is probably mud in Texas Tech circles because George Cox, never came back and played again. He tore up his knee and was never able to I don't think literally ever played another game after that. But, and of course, probably the favorite game for Texas, probably the favorite Tech A&M game for Tech folks is Zach Thomas interception return for a touchdown, in 94 or 5, I think. But anyhow, those are a few that jump out to me, and I'm sure you could talk just about, the other way.
Well, you got to remember the goalpost game. I mean, Aggies don't want to talk about that, but you always got to remember the goalpost game. I mean, holy cow! When things like that happens, and of course, A&M got to where they didn't want to go to Tech at all, and of course, I think one thing that we liked from both sides was we got to talk to Spike Dykes, and you got to talk to RC Slocum, and those guys could really charm the opposing media, so to speak. And, we saw, and of course, you've been there a lot longer, but I kind of saw when Tech came of age beating these teams. And I never forget, I don't know if it was the game where they had a long kickoff return, but they won a game at Kyle Field. I very remember, and I have to go back and look. It all runs together, but A&M was highly ranked. Tech won, and I'm doing the Tech sidebar afterwards. And one of the Houston writers or someone was basically, the way he asked questions was like, how shocked was Spike to win that game? And Spike, being his usual like cordial self, and he goes, well, I guess we're not supposed to win those kind of games, but we do win those kind of games, and I mean, it was like people finally woke up and said, and Spike kind of turned that. Then Mike Leach came in and dominated the series there for a while. And, the Tech A&M series was great to cover because the Aggies didn't want to think much about Tech. They always were worried about beating Texas. And then when they got to conference, Oklahoma, Nebraska, whatever, but then they couldn't beat Tech there because Tech was so good. And you mentioned a lot of it was about Leach, and great characters to cover, great players to cover. Cliff Kingsbury, the big overtime game, when you come down, how many overtime games was that game that time where A&M missed the extra point? You talk about, like you talked on, the games that go down to just unbelievable. You could write a whole book on A&M and Tech, and like you said even before we were here, some of those games, what I was always told about Tom Wilson drawing a play up in the huddle to beat A&M. And way before my time, you could write a whole book on A&M and Texas Tech. And I'll never forget when Bill Byrne, like the last time they went up there, Bill Byrne a lot of times would wear his, emotions on his sleeve, and he was up in the press box and he looked at the coach, we're never coming back here. It was just like, that's the rivalry. Unfortunately, A&M, I think, misses in the SEC when you hate the other team so much, and that helped make A&M and Tech. I thought.
And I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's what fans on both sides are missing out on, because you hear so much discussion now, conversation now among fans about conference expansion and next round of realignment and who should the Big 12 go get. Y'all probably don't hear this as much, obviously, in the SEC as we do here in the Big 12. So much, Tech fans and Big 12 fans are like, well, Big 12 should go get Brigham Young or Louisville or UCF when Central Florida was the hot school, the hot brand a couple of years ago. And like, no, they shouldn't. Those schools don't add anything. What the best thing that could happen to the Big 12 is for schools like Nebraska and the Aggies and Missouri to rejoin. The very fact, and you hear a lot of Tech fans say, heck with the Aggies, they left. Don't indulge them by ever playing them again. And my counter to that is you express so much vitriol and hate for schools like Texas A&M that proves that they are a rival school that you need to be playing, and it's borne out by every time those schools get together. That's your hottest ticket. And I looked it up a couple of years ago. I think this number's right. I don't remember the time period, but I looked up a couple of years ago that there was like a 28-year period where 26 out of 28 years, Texas' largest attended home game was either the A&M game or the Texas game. And to me, the fact that A&M doesn't play Texas anymore, that Oklahoma doesn't play Nebraska, that Missouri doesn't play Kansas is a travesty. Those are your
we'll show our age, Doc. I'm with you 100%. And don't get me wrong, SEC venues are great, but man, Grant Taft, Baylor, playing Texas, playing Tech. It's hard. That was hard. That was hard to beat. Those were things you look forward to. And like I said, the 50-yard line, whatever. But I guess we'll fast forward. What do you think, Mike? Before I let you go, what do you think Mike Leach is going to do after 3 or 4 years in the SEC?
I have concern for him because I just think that unless they can recruit offensive and defensive linemen, it's going to be tough sledding for them. Obviously it's clear that he can coach passing offense, of course, but the thing about it is it takes a while for that system to really click. His first year here, it was ugly. In 2000, Texas Tech played at Kyle Field, and it was a pretty good game. The Aggies wound up winning by a couple of touchdowns. I want to say 33-19, 35-19, something like that. But Cliff got killed that day. The Aggies front seven just pounded him to a pulp. It was between that game and the Nebraska game, probably the two roughest games from a physical standpoint of getting beat up in Cliff's career. And but the point being, though, that in 2000, the Texas Tech offense did not look like the high-flying Mike Leach offense that you expect. And it made progress in 2001, but it didn't really click and become high-powered and potent until 2002 in year 3. And I think he had some of the same kind of issues probably at Washington State. I remember reading some of the columnists up in Washington that first year. There's, it didn't happen immediately, and there was a bad loss or two in there somewhere. And there's a lot of skepticism of Mike Leach at Washington State at the beginning. I suspect you'll see the same thing in Mississippi State. The guys who aren't accustomed to running that offense are going to take a while to adjust to it. And I think there's going to be some ugly Saturdays for them this year and maybe next year. And it may take until year 3 or 4 for them to make some waves in the SEC. And that's easier to do in the Big 12. It's much easier to do in the Pac-12. I don't know how easy it's going to be in the SEC.
Don, thanks so much for giving us so much of your time today. We really, of course, enjoyed talking to you and getting the scoop on what's happened over in the Big 12. How is the best way that people can find your work and get in contact with you if they want to follow up from this?
Our website's lubbockonline.com. And on Twitter, I'm at AJ_Don Williams.
There you go.
Which, now speaking of, is C still not on Twitter?
He's the only AP Top 25 voter that doesn't have a Twitter handle.
I let my women folk keep me up on social media, but Don, first of all, thanks for coming on. What I like about is these kind of deals, we can do a little reminiscing, but we're still doing current things, Don. You and I are still kicking, so I think that's a good thing. But with you two guys, I need to get one of those big cups. See, you guys have all your Twitter accounts. I can get one of those big cups.
There you go. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Don, thanks so much again.
Hey, thanks, Don.
And be sure to check out his work. We'll be back next week with another Aggie Zoom Hangout. Thanks, everybody.